Either Hollywood really loves trans people, or there's something far more sinister going on behind closed doors. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the 511 show. You know, the whole reason this is called the 511 show is because Ephesians 5:11 says, have no fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. And that's exactly what I want to do with this video, because I know there's a lot of people who have noticed that Hollywood really seems to love the LGBTQ community to the point where they're pushing the agenda for the LGBTQ ad nauseum, to a point where you have to start asking yourself, what is really going on here? Why does Hollywood seem to have so much invested in this community that has a very, very small minority here in this country and many other countries? Well, with some of the things we're going to be talking about here tonight, I'm going to expose you to some things that you probably didn't know beforehand and maybe make you reconsider why they are so invested in this whole thing to begin with. Well, let's go ahead and start with the Golden Globe show. The Golden Globes happened a couple of nights ago, and as you guys know, is one of the big award shows in Hollywood. It's basically the #2 award show for Hollywood as far as film and television go throughout the entire year. Last night's show had the most nominations for a little film called Emilia, Pérez. And if you guys have never heard of the film Emilia, Pérez, first of all, consider yourself lucky. But the second of all, the reason why this film is getting so much, I guess you could say, adoration by Hollywood, while it's getting so much praise, while it's being revered so much, is because the central plot line of this movie is that it is about a Mexican drug cartel leader who decides that he is going to transition into a woman in order to lead a new life. And that's literally the entire plot of the film. This is a French, Spanish language musical crime comedy film. So I know that sounds very, very appeasing to a lot of you people. This was not a box office success by any stretch of the imagination. This is a film that cost 25 million euros to produce, and so far it's only made about 9.5 million American in the box office. But as we know, with a lot of these films, it's not about the money, it's about the message. But why does Hollywood love this film so much? Well, here's a quick little scene here, for an actual real scene from the movie that is dominating the award season. Is probably going to walk away with a lot of Oscars here in a few months. It may even win Best Picture. But here's a little preview here of Emilia, Pérez.
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation.
I see. Men to woman, or woman to men.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina.
That was not a parody. That was not AI. That was an actual scene from the movie. By the way, as you can see here, that is, I believe, Zoe Saldana, who's in the film as well, doing the very, very poor singing. She won an award for that film. Weird how that happened. No, the whole Rachel Zegler line. Weird. But this is a film that's getting a lot of award recognition for that very reason. You can also see some of the other films that are featured in this photo here. Wicked is a film that's getting a lot of praise right now. I know it's made some money at the box office. If you haven't seen that movie, that film panders very, very heavily to the LGBTQ community. And the movie on the far right here that you see, that is a little movie called Conclave. And if you guys have never seen Conclave or haven't heard of that film, that is a movie where the Roman Catholic Church has to pick a new pope. And there's a lot of, backstabbing. There's a lot of scandal, even a terrorist attack that happens throughout the course of the film. But at the very, very end of the film, the spoiler here is that they end up electing an intersex pope, which is basically a hermaphrodite pope, who you can probably make an argument for, a solid argument that it's a trans pope when you really get down to it. And that's another film that is getting a lot of award recognition. It's gotten nominated for plenty of awards. It's another Best Picture nominee, possibly could end up winning here in a few months. So you're noticing a trend here with Hollywood that they seem to really love films that play up to the LGBTQ community. In a lot of instances, it seems to be particularly the T that they really truly love the most. So the question here is, why is that? why is it that Hollywood seems so obsessed with trans people? And if you've noticed this, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person who has noticed this, but there's a lot of Hollywood stars, Hollywood celebrities, people who are in that Hollywood bubble who seem to have a lot of trans children these days, right? And if you look around Hollywood, all you see is a bunch of celebrities that seemingly have trans kids out of nowhere, whether they're very, very young kids or teenagers, even full-blown adults now. Everyone has a trans kid in Hollywood. Here's Megan Fox with her 3 boys. By the way, these are boys in the picture here. These are not girls. These are all of her kids, and it looks like she's transitioning them at a very, very young age. Very, very weird here, right? Here's another picture of Marsha Gay Harden with her 3 trans kids. I believe she only has 3 children, and every single one of them is trans. It's almost as if, let's say, it's statistically impossible to have 3 trans kids in one household. Here's another picture of Marlon Wayans. He recently came out of having a trans kid as well, so he's dealing with this whole situation. Here's Charlize Theron, who adopted 2 kids from Africa and then raised them both to be trans. She even went as far to say that the youngest one came out as trans at 3 years old. So that's really, really weird and really, really disturbing when you think about it. You adopt a 3-year-old, and then the 3-year-old tells you that they want to be a girl now, so you raise him trans as a child. That's very, very, there's something off here in that whole situation. There's a couple of more examples here. Cher with his adult trans kid, I guess, son, whatever that case is. And then, of course, you have Dwayne Wade here on the right. His son recently came out as trans, so now he's being raised as his daughter now. So I'm pretty sure that he won't have that kid playing in the NBA like LeBron James' kids are, so that's unfortunate. And then, of course, you have Jamie Lee Curtis here with her adult trans kid as well. So it's like, what is going on here? Why is it that Hollywood, a town, a very, very small town, mind you, is so obsessed with the LGBTQ community, so obsessed with the trans community, and it seems like every person in that town has somebody who is trans? Is there something more going on here? Well, I think there actually may be. Now, some of you guys watching this were probably asking, who is this woman that you showed at the very beginning of the video? Well, this woman is known as the Babylonian god Ishtar. Now, of course, depending on what nation you were at the time, this is a woman who was known by many, many names. Obviously, Ishtar being one of them, Inanna being another, Isis being another one, Ashtaroth. Some even called her the Queen of Heaven, which I find very, very interesting, because you guys probably know that there's a lot of people out there who like to call the person who they like to venerate as the Queen of Heaven as well. It's almost as if there's a parallel here, right? And when you go a little deeper into exactly who this pagan god actually was and what this pagan god represented and what the followers of this pagan god did to essentially show worship to this entity, you start to see a lot of parallels here between ancient Babylonian worship and what we're seeing in Hollywood today. Now, look, I know if I sit here and I read a couple of Bible verses to you, you're probably not going to believe anything that I have to say. So I want to go ahead and check out some secular historical sources here, sources that are very much not Christian at all, and find out a little bit more information about this pagan goddess that dominated a world a long time ago. And you have to ask yourself, is it still around today? So this is an article from The Collector, and this is talking about the history of this Babylonian goddess named Ishtar that people worshipped a very, very long time ago. And like I said, they may still actually worship this thing today. Let's go down here for a second. I want to jump down to a very, very important aspect of this article. This might raise some eyebrows for you guys if you guys are paying attention here. I want to read just a little bit of this source here saying that her influence, talking about the demonic pagan god here, says that her influence over war and justice gave her a significant amount of political power. So rulers would associate themselves with Ishtar to legitimize their royal authority. Very, very interesting. But here's where it gets really, really interesting. The very next paragraph here, keep in mind, this is a secular source of world history, just saying that what people did at this time period to show worship to this being. Along with her political influence, Ishtar rose as a liminal deity gave her a unique authority over the cultural roles of the Mesopotamian societies as well. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Corresponding Ishtar's own abilities to transcend categories, the goddess of love enabled her followers to defy and even redefine social boundaries, particularly those related to gender roles. Men who became priests of Ishtar, known as the Gala, would sometimes engage in some non-binary gender roles, dress in women's clothing, and were allowed to engage in homosexuality. That's very, very interesting. So apparently people who were priests and who were essentially worshiping and following this deity were known for being essentially non-binary, dressing in women's clothing, which means drag, of course, and engaging in homosexuality. That sounds very, very strongly like the modern day LGBTQ community today, doesn't it? So maybe you're going, that's just one source. Who knows, right? Well, let me go here to the World History of Encyclopedia, and they even have their own little write-up here on this entity that was being worshipped during this time period. And very, very interesting what they have to say here. It says that the priest and the priestess of the popular goddess Inanna, like I said, has multiple names depending on what region she was being worshipped on at the time, says that they were bisexual and transgender. As an aspect of the goddess was considered awe-inspiring was her ability to turn men into women and women into men, the power of transformation. So this entity was praised for its ability to turn men into women and women into men. That's absolutely, wow, I never even knew that. But it says here that her father god, quote unquote, Enki, is said to have created a third gender, neither male nor female, who became Inanna's servant, her clergy. What is referred to as non-binary gender today was recognized over 3,000 years ago as a third gender created by the divine will of Inanna. That is some very, very interesting stuff. Now, why were they all doing this? Well, it goes on to say here that the gods also bless same-sex relationships, as is clearly seen in the document, the Almanac of Incantations. So essentially what this is saying here is that the people who worship this deity believed that they were going to bring good fortune and prosperity to themselves by having sex with each other in homosexual relations. Not only that, but to show honor and worship to this entity, they were making themselves transgender by flipping their gender from male to female to female to male as well. And keep in mind, these are all secular sources. These are not Christian sources whatsoever. These are secular sources that you can find with a simple Google search on the internet right now if you want to. You'll probably find some very, very disturbing ties here that you probably didn't originally consider. But there is one biblical source that I want to use here, because believe it or not, this very entity, the Queen of Heaven, is in fact mentioned in the Bible. And let's just say that God has nothing positive to say about this entity whatsoever. It says here in Jeremiah 7, verse 18, they poured out drink offerings to other gods. They made cakes for the Queen of Heaven that they may provoke me to anger. Is it possible that the reason why Hollywood is so obsessed with the modern day LGBTQ community is because there's actually something spiritual going on in that town that they're spreading to the rest of the world? And is that a reason associated with a rebellion against God himself? All I can do is present you guys the information and let you come to your own conclusion. So let us know in the chat. Do you think that there's something going on here with Hollywood? Do you think there's a reason why companies like GLAAD or organizations like GLAAD are pushing so hard for every major studio, Amazon, Disney, ABC, Comcast, Warner Brothers, all the big studios out there? Is there a reason why they're so committed in making sure that nearly half, and I do mean half, of every television show and movie that comes out of Hollywood to have at least one LGBTQ character front and center in everything that you watch? Is there something that they're more committed to? And maybe that's the reason why you see so many trans kids in Hollywood and why you see so much trans content coming out of that town. Is there something going on here? Let me know in the comments. But until now, that's the end of the show. I'll see you guys later.